What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Beyond the Veil. Today, I got a really awesome guest, super awesome guest. We got Brandi Van. How you doing, Brandi?
All right. Thanks so much for having me today.
I'm really excited to have you on the show. We talk back and forth. I like to get different points of views and perspectives from people that are in the paranormal field and supernatural. I think that's so important because not one person's experience is the same as the next. So I'm pretty excited to hear your story. Would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Brandi Van. I am a spiritual medium and a psychic development mentor. So for those of you who might not know what a medium is, I am able to connect with dead people all day long. And then now I'm a mentor for other people. So if someone wants to develop their psychic abilities or learn that they're a medium, I now have a program that I can help them because when dead people first come to you or any spirit, you might feel a little crazy. You might feel like your people might think you're making it up. So I definitely want to be that person for other people to say, hey, I've been through it. I've heard it all. No judgment. And to get them from point A to Z to learn how to control their ability.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I agree 100%. I think that one of the things that is missing in this world, in the world of supernatural, is the people that bridge the gap in between having the ability and practicing the ability out in the open.
Yeah, and a lot of it is so hush hush. So it's like, unfortunately, a lot of people don't talk about it. And I just want to be the spokesperson to say, I love this stuff. So, yeah, I would just love for people to come out of the closet about it and talk about it. It's actually a really beautiful thing when you have these gifts. So I just feel like, yeah, let's all join together and make the world a better place and use our abilities.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. And every psychic medium that I've had on the show, I've mentioned that it's more socially acceptable to talk about now, but it's still like one of those weird things, right? Like I'm pretty sure like it's weird to say, "Hey, I'm a psychic medium," and then wait for somebody's response, right?
Yeah.
Um, especially if they don't believe. But back in the day, people that had psychic abilities and were mediums, they were put in insane asylums and institutions, and it was terrifying. It's scary.
Yeah. A lot of people just have the wrong misconception. They think you're a witch or that you're dealing with the occult. Like they just don't understand it enough. So I feel like, yeah, like you said, at least now, people are talking about it a lot more. They're understanding it more. And now there's even scientists working with us to figure out what's going on in our brains whenever we are able to connect. So I think even in the future, it's definitely gonna, like, who knows, maybe the scientists will take my job. I hope not, but like hopefully it'll evolve. And so in places like the UK and in other countries, it's such a it's such a thing that they talk about. But now here, it's just not something that in the US we talk about so much.
Yeah, in the US, we tend to protect things that other countries don't necessarily protect or gatekeep in that sense. And so I applaud you for what you do. You are a huge help in your community, and you're doing amazing work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
So are you?
I try my best. I do my best. Thank
Yeah.
you. So before we get into the more macabre things of life, um, Brandy, I was reading through your website and I was like, oh man, what are some talking points that I can go over prior to? You were in the crowd of the Price is Right, and now this is Drew. Is this Drew Carey Price is Right?
Yeah, this is Drew Carey.
Nice, nice. What was that experience like?
Oh, it was amazing. I always say it was the best day of my life, and then my husband's like, "What about our wedding?" And I'm like, "That was the second best day." But yeah, the best day of my life was Price is Right. So my husband was like, "I want to go to California," and I was like, "The only thing I want to do in California is be in the audience of the Price is Right." So I because I have these abilities, I made vision boards of my husband getting called down, and I would say every day, like, you're the next contestant on The Price is Right. And everyone would say, like, you're so hyper, you're so outgoing, you're gonna get called down. I'm like, no, my husband's gonna get called down. And he did. So he got to play, he got to spin the wheel. It was like an 8-hour process. Like you're there a very long time. And at that time, before the pandemic, there were 325 people in the audience, and only like I think 6 people get called down. So when they call your name, you have like a maybe 15-second little interview with the what's it called, with the studio recorder, or
Mhm.
what's it called, the producer.
Producer.
Sorry, you can edit that part out. With the producer, and you have to really like wow them for you to get your name called down. And I don't know, he did it, and he got called down, and it was so awesome.
That is awesome. That's pretty cool. That's I've never had anything cool like that happen before. that's that's pretty cool. Um, so next, I wanted to talk about you love to go some more spooky and some more of the locations that a lot of people don't like to go. I mean, aside from like Halloween Horror Nights, which I've never been to and I want to go to.
Yes, you have to go. It's so amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm going to a local haunt around here in next week, so that's exciting. Or
Okay, that's fun.
when this gets recorded, I will have already gone.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah, I love being scared. I love the being intense and like on the back end being like, whoa, that was wild. Um, but how was your experience at Halloween Horror Nights?
Halloween Horror Nights is so fun. I've never been to the one in California, but the Florida one is so fun. Like, even when you're not in the haunted house, they have these scare zones that like I literally could sit there and watch these people on stilts like the entire night. Like, I love watching them scare other people, and these people just like get so scared out of their minds, and their makeup is amazing. And it's because it's got that like movie studio atmosphere to it. So like the actual like haunted house is so like perfectly, like, so many details, and you really have to go through the haunted houses actually more than once, because they kind of like make you go quickly because there's so many people there. I definitely recommend skipping the lines when you're there too. But yeah, it's awesome. If I could go every year, I definitely would. Like, it's so much fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you've also been to Salem. Tell me what your experience was like in Salem.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, to give you a little bit of background, so I am a medium and I'm a spiritual advisor, but a lot of people who have psychic abilities don't also like the paranormal. But I just love all of it. So I love the paranormal as well. So I had worked with a mentor, and she had told me that I was actually a descendant of witches. And all of the witches in my ancestry line were bad witches. So they were doing a lot of curses and spells. And I'm the first one to be like the good witch and trying to do good with my abilities. So when I went to Salem, it was like, I think the witches were like, welcome home. And so much happened to me while I was there. I was seeing like orbs with my naked eye. Like, I was on a ghost tour, and I'm like not even listening to the tour guide because I'm having my own experiences. Um, I took pictures, and the one picture was like the bench was haunted, and I have a picture of like a head was on the bench. Like, you couldn't see it with your naked eye, but then you took the
Wow.
picture and a head was on there. And then I also got like this, I don't even know what he was. He had like long hair, and he was in like a window. So anyway, so these pictures I took, I went to the tour guide place, and I said I caught these pictures. And what they do is they go back at night at the same time, and they try to recreate exactly what it was, like where the moonlight was, where there might have been light, whatever. And there were three of my pictures that they were not able to recreate. So they
Wow.
were like, this was definitely something that you caught, that it was not like, in your mind, you're thinking it's awesome, but then it was like real validation that
Yeah.
these things were happening. But the crazier thing that I did there was a seance. And I always thought a seance would be very scary. And actually, it was so emotional. Like, I was able to call on my grandma. It was like as though she was sitting right next to me, holding my hand. I was crying, and I had all my Halloween makeup on. My makeup was all stained up. But yeah, it was like, oh, Salem was so much fun. It was amazing. So yeah, I definitely recommend that you get there.
That's awesome. It sounds like it's your mecca.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like a call toward there for sure. Yeah, it
That
was so
is
much fun.
that's pretty awesome. I think a lot of times people when they get called to go to places, they are like, "Oh no, it's just nonsense. I shouldn't know. I don't know why I feel that way." And then there's those of us like me that when you get the calling, you're like, "Pfft, I gotta go.
Yeah, gotta go.
Gotta go. I gotta figure out a way to get there, but I'm gonna get there."
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
I had
And
a
there's been
call.
so
Go ahead.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's been so many places that it's like, I'll meditate and I'm like asking spirit to come to me. Like I've been to like Gettysburg, New Orleans, like so many places where it's really haunted, and I'll go and then nothing happens. And then I get really disappointed because I want something to happen and I feel like, come on, I have these abilities. Why can't I get something? But I think because my abilities are so for like higher spirits and not
Mhm.
so much the negative ones. So maybe that's why they don't come to me. But yeah, I try as hard as I can to get an experience. But
That
with pictures, I almost always get something. So my pictures with me are like really awesome.
that is super cool. Um, I've had a few experiences. I've never had like apparition. I've never seen it. Can say I've seen an apparition. I've definitely felt things around me. I've heard things around me, but never seen anything. So I think the people that are lucky enough to see things and capture things like that, they are lucky. And I don't mean lucky as in the sense of, oh, I've caught something. I mean like they they've gotten to experience something that not a lot of human beings can say that they have.
Yeah. So let me tell you about when I saw my apparition. It was so
Mhm.
awesome. So, okay, so in Philadelphia here, that's where I live, and down by the airport, there's Fort Mifflin.
Mhm.
Every time I go to Fort Mifflin, something happens. That place is super haunted. So one time, like something grabbed my foot. Another time, I got a picture of like this smog. But the biggest one happened was I went on a candlelit ghost tour, and so you're
Mhm.
going around the tour, and then I went back to my car, and I was with my husband, who's a skeptic. And when we were at the car, now we're not even on the tour anymore, right? We're in the parking lot getting ready to go in the car. And we see an apparition. And it looked like, because the soldiers used to be there, it looked like a revolutionary soldier had like the hat on. So we see it like marching across like a soldier would back and forth. And so my husband's like, you see what I'm seeing? And I'm like, yeah, you see what I'm seeing? And he's freaked out, but I'm like amazed by it. So I turn around and make sure like there's nobody in the parking lot. There's no way this is a shadow of anyone. And then I like run toward the apparition and I'm like, is anybody here? Trying to prove that it's an apparition. So he wants to leave, but I'm like, hell no. Like, I'm going back to the tour guide. So I tell the tour guy, we just saw an apparition in the parking lot. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't say this in the tour, but that's where there used to be a building there and soldiers would go back and forth. And that's where they would protect the fort. He was like, so it doesn't surprise me at all that you saw it. And he was like, that's terrifying. And I'm like, no, it's amazing. I was so amazed by it. And then the whole ride home, my husband's driving and like looking in the back, like thinking that the spirit's in the car with us. I'm like, he's been there for 300 years. Like, I don't think he wants anything to do with us. But yeah, that was like full blown total apparition, like amazing. And when you have abilities, the people around you start to like feed off of that. And so even though my husband's a skeptic, has no abilities, he was able to see it just because of how strong I am. So that was like amazing.
That is pretty awesome. I've noticed one common thing. A lot of people that have abilities, their partners are skeptics,
Yeah,
which
right. Interesting.
which I don't think that is a point in being like I have to prove to you that this shit is real, right? But it's more
Yeah.
along the lines of, oh, now you know that it's real.
Yeah. Can't explain it, but something happened.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And it's funny, so we have this thing where even though he doesn't believe, he always says if a criminal comes in the house, a physical person, he's got it. But if a bad spirit comes into the house, then I've got it. And I'm like, no, you're a skeptic, but yet I got to take care of the bad spirits. So
yeah. Oh, that's wild. That's wild. The thing is like a lot of people can't comprehend what how they would react in a situation where they have encountered the paranormal, right? I know a lot of
yeah,
people are like, "Oh, I would." You don't know what you're gonna do.
yeah,
It's the same as if your life was in danger and you got put in a situation where it was life or death. You don't know how you're gonna handle. So it's one of those weird macabre things, and I believe that the energy cannot be just displaced, right? Like it has to
yes,
keep going. So
yeah,
therefore, that energy has to go somewhere.
yeah. And the way I describe it is like if a native spirit came in here right now and tried to scare me, it's really just your self trust and your self confidence. And I say to treat them like a bully. If a
Yeah.
criminal would come in here, I'm fight or flight and I'm out the door. But if a spirit comes in here, I just stand my ground. Like, no, you're not going to scare me today. You need to get out of my house and you just need to be confident. And if they see that they're not scaring you or they're not making your anxiety go, then they're going to leave because they know that it's not going to work for me. So yeah, it's actually it's more in your mind what's fearful, and you can control that. So if you know you can control that, then it's not scary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Brandy, let's dive into it. When was the first time that you realized that you had abilities or gifts?
Sure. So I was about 10 years old. I was able to hear spirits more than anything. And so it was my voice, but not my thought. And so I thought I was literally going crazy. And I was afraid to tell people about it until I realized there was like a pattern that I was like, okay, I think this is a spirit coming to me, but I still just ignored it. And then I started to dabble with the Ouija board when I was like in my teenage
Mm,
years, which is not good because I didn't know how powerful I was. I didn't know what I was doing. So my very first experience with a spirit that I could see it, with my naked eye, not in my mind's eye, was I was about 17 and I was going through the woods after a pool party to go get some pizza. There was a path back in the woods, and I was with my two guy friends, and something growled at us. And I'm thinking, okay, is this an animal? Like, you don't know at that point what it was. So the two guys, like, thanks a lot. They run, they leave me there by myself. I'm just like literally in shock, can't even run. Well, this thing came toward me growling and it pushed me into the brush. And I look up and it's like half black, half white figure. And I'm thinking, like, wait a minute, this is not an animal. Is this a human like wearing a mask? Like, it just didn't make sense. And I'm thinking, like, oh my God, I'm gonna be attacked. So luckily I was able to muster my courage up. I ran out of the woods. I went back to my parents' house and I called the cops. So the cops went back and they're like, there's nothing back there. And you're thinking, like, it doesn't make sense that it was a human because why would they just be waiting randomly in the woods in case some kids walk back there? Like, just didn't make sense. So it took a couple, probably months, if not a year, for me to realize, like, oh my God, no, that was a negative entity that I had somehow entered into my space. And when you do have psychic abilities, you're like a bright white light. So he or she, whatever, probably saw me walk into the woods. I'm this bright white light, and it was probably like, okay, let's see what she can do, right? It was probably just trying to like taunt me. So that was my very first experience, but I've never had a bad experience like that again, thank goodness. My next experience was I was in my 20s, early 20s, and my grandma was passing away. So my whole family was around her as she took her last breath. We were holding hands. And as she took her last breath, I had this really strong feeling to look above the bed. And
mhm.
I knew that I was feeling her spirit leave her body. And when I looked above the bed, there were all these like brilliant colors, like the most magnificent bright colors you've ever seen. And they were forming a star and they were beating in and out like a heartbeat.
Mhm.
And I realized she was at peace. She wanted me to see it. She wanted me to know that. And then that's what changed my view on everything. I was like, this is actually a beautiful ability. I want to be able to help myself and others. And then that's what got me on my journey. So that was very two drastic experiences. But yeah, that's what led me to where I am today.
Yeah, Ouija board. I don't mess with those.
Yeah, not me anymore either.
No, no, and it's crazy because you can go to Target and buy one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is so irresponsible,
Yeah.
to be
I think if
honest.
you know what you're doing, you can do it correctly. But word of advice though, if you're ever trying to get rid of a Ouija board, people think, oh, I'm going to burn it or I'm going to give it to someone or I'm going to bury it. You actually need to put it in a case because that's where it's going to keep the energy instead of the energy coming out. So, just a little tip.
Yep, yep. I have a story of my own about that, but this is not about me. It's about you.
Okay.
Um, so you see the spirit of your grandmother, pass on, move on. Um, where when did you start like honing your craft and start learning and practicing as a psychic medium?
Yeah, so I mean, that week I was like reading a ton of books and I started watching TV shows and listening to podcasts, but like nothing was working. I mean, it was like years of, okay, I'm reading a lot about it, I'm learning a lot about it, but nothing's happening. I still can't set boundaries with spirit. I can't control when they're going to come. So I actually took me years to find a mentor.
Mhm.
And once I did, I only worked with her maybe an hour a month for 6 months, so maybe 6 hours. And then my abilities just skyrocketed. Once someone can show you the ropes of this is what you need to do. And so it's basically exercising your psychic muscle. And so I always say, imagine that like you want to lose weight, but you're just reading the exercises and you're not actually going to the gym. It's not going to work. And this is that same way. You need to learn what exercises to do because it's a lot of not just meditation, but visualizations. It's a lot of imagination. So you really need to learn how to work out that muscle. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And that's what I teach in my mentorship program.
Absolutely. What were some of the foundation lessons that you learned that you still use today?
Yeah, so a huge one is you have to trust your intuition. I mean, that is like the biggest thing for someone. But in order to do that, you need to quiet your ego. You need to quiet the rational mind because your mind is always going to say, like, you're just making this up. There's no way you know this. So you really need to trust yourself. So if someone's wondering how to listen to your intuition, there's 4 steps. So the first step is you have to ask it a question because how are you going to get an answer if you don't ask a question, right? So you have to get into that mindset of asking it a question. Then you need to listen to the answer, and you only have 4 seconds. And that fifth second, your rational mind comes in and you start thinking about the answer. So you have 4 seconds to feel it in your gut, in your heart, in your soul, and that's your answer. And if it goes to that fifth second, it's in your mind. You've already missed the intuition though. The third step is you need to trust it because it's always going to lead you to the best destination that's right for your life. So, get you to your higher path, get you to make the right decision, whatever it might be. And then the fourth step is you need to act on it because if you don't act on it, then it's like you didn't do any of the steps. You're not listening, you're not trusting. So, then you have to actually do what it says, even if it might not be something that your mind is telling you to do. You still got to do it.
Yeah, I think intuition plays a big part in what you do, right? Because
Absolutely.
um, you said it. Your rational brain can take over and just be like, "Pfft, I ain't doing that. That's
Yeah.
stupid, right?
Yeah,
But like
exactly.
if you let your intuition go and you run with your intuition, you'll get better results on the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, how many times have you been like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, right? So, that's what we're trying to avoid because it was trying to tell you something and your rational mind got in the way, didn't listen, and then something that shouldn't have happened or bad, could have been better. And that's what
Absolutely.
we're trying to get at the better stuff.
Absolutely. Intuition reflects in people in different ways. With it could be like a stomach ache or a throb in the head or something. What is it like for you?
So, mine is actually a tickle in my throat. So I
Mhm.
get that a lot. And it's also just like, I can't even describe it. It's just like a knowing without knowing how I know. It's just like a
Yeah,
feeling of knowing.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of like nerve wracking. You're like, I know, but I don't know, but I do
Yeah. I don't know how I know, but whatever.
know. Right. All right. So you start on this path, and you're starting to learn and develop and become who you are today. What made you want to become a mentor and turn to help other people?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of mediumship readings. I was doing spirit guide readings, and it's great in the moment. I know I'm making a difference in people's lives. I'm giving them a lot of healing and comfort when they're grieving. But then I was thinking, like, how hard the beginning of my journey was. And I was like, why was it so hard to find someone? Like, why is no one mentoring? So I would love to just be able to create as many light workers as possible because the more people that can do this, the more we can help. So I just feel like my mission or my purpose here is to make more of those people so that we can help more people. And I feel like that's my greater calling. And honestly, like, I don't want to talk to dead people all day. So yeah, there's that
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine that gets annoying sometimes.
Yeah. And then I'm not living like my human life because then I'm just like, in the dead world all the time. So yeah, this is a
Yeah,
great compromise.
absolutely. I heard a really cool saying the other day that says, "I am a soul living a human experience." Is that something that you
Yeah.
kind of feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say we are a soul with a body. We're not a body with a soul. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree wholeheartedly. So, you talked about meditation a little bit. What does meditation do for you?
Meditation just clears my mind so that I mean I can get to the point where I'm not having any thoughts, which it takes a lot to get there. It is a meditation practice. You do need to practice it. And then once I'm in that completely clear state, consciousness transcends death. So then the consciousness of our deceased loved ones can then go into my mind as I'm a channel for them, and then I start to think their thoughts. So when I'm doing a reading for someone, even though I'm having thoughts, they're not mine, they're their deceased loved ones.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love meditation. It changes the whole scope of every
It
part of
does.
my day, every part of
Yes.
my situation.
Yes.
Even if it's just deep belly breathing, right? Like it just
Yeah.
changes the scope. when people say, I used to hate it before I did it, and when I'd hear people say just breathe, I'm like, I am, right? I am. How am I talking to you if I'm not breathing? But I understand it now. I
Yeah,
understand it now. It's so much
yeah,
different than just breathing, right?
yes.
It's an exercise of pushing all the negative stuff out.
Yes. And on the in the inhale, envisioning positivity. So I always say to envision that white light coming in, it's going into your heart, your lungs, your blood, and exhaling anything negative. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, it's
Go
awesome.
ahead.
I always notice too, like, why am I in a bad mood today? And I'm like, oh, I didn't meditate yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I used to provide these. I used to do these classes for another project that I do, and it's not supernatural in any bit. But when I would do these training classes at the beginning, we would either do like a process through your day, or like I'd say, hey, look, we can meditate, and for 5 minutes or so, and I would lead the meditation. And on the back end of it, people are like, we need to meditate. Literally was like, I would come and I'd give them the option the next day. They're like, meditate. We need. I don't care
Wow.
to talk about my day. We need to meditate, and it's all
That's
about the
crazy.
language too, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
presence that you give, but it's also about the language you use, about envisioning yourself surrounded by a shrouding white light. You know, giving off that energy, taking that light inside of you, and it changes the scope and the perspective of everything around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize that the different hertzes in the meditation, that frequency can also get you to feel different things. So I always tell people, you can always like go on YouTube or whatever and put in like spirit guide meditation or put in calming meditation. There's different hertzes that will actually, you'll have different experiences within your meditation if you do that. So yeah, you always want to look out for like, different types of meditation as well. But I don't do guided meditations anymore. I'm just like the music now.
Yeah. Do you? So you just said music. I was about to ask, what kind of music do you meditate to?
So it depends on what I'm trying to do that day. So yeah, if I'm trying to communicate with a spirit guide, shamanic healing, so I'll listen to like Native American music. So I think it literally changes every day. Like there's never one thing. It just depends on what I'm trying to focus on and have my intention on that day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird that you said Native American music and shamanic music, because I'm studying in some shamanic right now, and
Awesome.
weird parallel, um,
Yeah.
but but I've been having a lot of those since I started doing this show, which it's awesome. It's crazy, wild, cool. But I had a spiritual experience earlier this year where I was listening, and like I was listening to a song, and I started going into a meditative state, and next thing I know, like I could feel the rhythm of the drums in my chest. And
Wow.
it was like I was feeling the sound waves hit my body and reverberate off of it. And it was insane because I haven't felt that in a while. Like I used to
Definitely.
meditate all the time, and I used to do deep meditations where like you could punch me and I wouldn't feel it.
Wow.
And yeah. And so like the benefits of meditation just don't go into like calming yourself down. It goes into so much more.
Oh
And you could
yeah.
do a lot more past meditation, past all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it improves your sleep, it helps with anxiety, like it just it's so good for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's crazy
So
when I meditate, a lot of times the electronics will go like crazy. So like all of a sudden the ceiling fan will turn on and be on like high speed or like the lights will start to flicker and my husband's always like, tell your friends to go away.
that's funny. Now, do you believe that you can displace your soul anywhere? Like you can like you can physically, well, not physically, obviously, but you can take your soul and send it somewhere else and do some work somewhere else.
So I do, but I think it takes a lot of almost like being hypnotized because I feel like you really need to do it with someone who knows what they're doing. You don't want to do this on your own. And I'm speaking of my own experience. So I did a past life regression therapy session, and so the whole point of past life is to like see what trauma you went through and what you're learning in this life of what you like are supposed to learn from your last life and heal through those traumas, but I wasn't traumatized. I mean, I did go through trauma, but I wasn't traumatized by that. What I was traumatized by was my spirit leaving my body. It was like I went to the past and then I went to the spirit world, and then I came back. But that whole time I was sitting on my couch for like 4 hours. And when I came back into my body, I was so uncomfortable for days. I was like it felt like I had aches and pains, like when you have the flu or something, and I had a headache, and my stomach hurt. I wasn't hungry. So it was actually like I was more traumatized. Like I would much rather just stay in my physical body. But yeah, so I definitely think it can happen. And I don't know if it was that much stronger for me because I have abilities. But yeah, the fact that I like left and came back like really freaked me out. But other people love it, so whatever everybody likes.
I know everybody's different. One of the things that I wondered about is how much does validation play in a role for you?
So at the beginning, validation is huge. And even when I was doing mediumship readings, they would like the reader, or I'm sorry, the sitter would validate something, and I would still be doubting myself because my ego would still be in it, and my rational mind saying, like, you're just pulling this out of your ass. And I'm no, like, they're clearly like, how would I have known this? And so it is that self trust because you need to trust in spirit, you need to trust in the message, you need to trust in yourself. And that takes time to really do it. But now I'm at the point where I don't need validations anymore. I just trust it. And that's a really good place to be in whenever you don't need the validations anymore and you just trust it, because there might be someone that says, no, this doesn't make any sense to me. This is like not making any sense. And then they might come back to me a week later and say, oh, you know what? I talked to my mom and she said everything made sense to her. So you like, even in that moment, they might not think it's validating, but it might be. So you just have to trust it.
Yeah, sometimes you receive messages that aren't intended for that person, but somebody
Yeah,
in their family or along down the line,
exactly. Yep.
and that's something for them to hold on to.
Yeah. And you can't change the message either. That's another huge thing. Your ego or your rational mind wants to understand the message. And that's why you just have to, as soon as you feel it, give that message, because then your mind's going to come in and try to make sense, like how it would fit in your life. But it's not about me, right? It's about the person I'm reading. And so you really have to just word for word, whatever the message is, give it. I'll tell you what the hardest thing is like when someone's not at peace and someone comes to me and they want like comfort and they want to heal, and I have to tell them like, oh, I'm so sorry, but your loved one is not at peace yet. They
Mhm.
will be at peace, but I think a lot of times people think they just automatically go over and they're at peace, and that's not always the case, especially in like suicide cases or someone that died young unexpectedly. Like there are times where they're not at peace yet, and I have to tell them, and that's the hardest message. And your mind so wants to change it, but you just can't. You have to trust it.
Yeah, that's that was my next question was,
Mm.
what's the hardest thing? But how would you get somebody at peace, or is that something that spirit has to work through in order to get past?
I mean, yeah, you can cross a spirit over when they're earthbound, but I feel like, you're opening the door, but for them to walk through it, I feel like they really need to do it on their own. So they need to, whatever it is that they're here for, that they need to either work it out. The biggest thing really is they need to accept themselves and just whatever it is, just let it go and realize there are no judgments and they just need to pass on. So you can have that conversation with them, and I'm sure some mediums will probably disagree and say, like, no, I can definitely cross them over. But that's been in my experience that I feel like I can take them so far, but then they need to do the rest of the work.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what are the next steps for you? What does your future look like?
My future, so right now I do have a day job, and my future would be just like traveling, and I can do my mentorship program all day, every day without having to be in one place. So I can travel, quitting my day job. And the best thing about the program is watching these people's transformations. Like, it is so awesome when someone comes in and they're like, I think I have an ability. I'm not sure if I do. And then by the end of the program, like, they have abilities that I don't even have. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And they always get like halfway through and they're like, I don't think this is working. I think I'm going to quit. And I'm like, listen, it's not going to happen overnight. Keep going. And then by the end of the program, they're doing amazing things. And like, if I could just witness that all day, every day, like that would be heaven on earth for me.
Absolutely. What does it make you feel like when you see somebody that kind of gets over that hurdle of their brain or their ego or their
Yes.
emotions?
I can't even describe it. It puts me back to where I was at one point, and I remember my aha moments of whenever I got through that. It is just a feeling of like pure joy and like feeling like I'm really living in alignment with what I'm meant to do, because I don't want to say like yay is me, I got them there, but I was able to be that channel for them for that to happen, and now they're going to go do amazing things. And that chain of events, like knowing that they had to make that decision to come to me, and then I was able to do it, and we worked together, like it's like indescribable. Love it.
Yeah. There was a chain of events that had to happen to get them to where they are.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
And I can
awesome.
get them on that path. Like, oh, I'm so lucky.
That that is pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. Before we go, what do you feel was your hardest situation that you've been in as a medium?
Um, yeah, so it was definitely like I was saying with the okay, so there was this 21-year-old male, and it was his 21st birthday, and again, he's in the spirit world. So his parents came to me for a message from him, but on his 21st birthday, his friend was driving and they were at the bar and they got in an accident on the ride home. He was the passenger, he passed away, and the friend did not. And his message was just full of anger, full of resentment and bitterness. And he had passed away probably 12 years ago at that point, I think it was around there. So a significant amount of time had passed. But for me to give them that message was just, it was so hard. And you really have to take your emotion out of it, because then your rational mind's getting in there. So you really have to just stay stoic. And they're crying, and I'm like, do you still want me to continue with the message? And they wanted me to. But I always say they're not at peace yet, because they will be at peace. I don't want them to think they're never going to be at peace. So I want to give them that hope. But obviously they came to me for it now, and and sometimes that message just isn't there, and that's just always the hardest thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brandy, where can we find you at?
So you can go to my website, brandyvan.com. That's Brandy with an I. And if anyone wants to book a discovery call to see if you're a good fit for the mentorship program, but I just want to be that like-minded community. So even if you just want to share your experience, know that you're not crazy, and have someone to listen and tell you, I know exactly where you've been. They can call me for that as well. I can obviously talk about this stuff all day long. So it's never like anyone's bugging me. You can always reach out.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Brandy, for hanging out and sharing your experience. I appreciate you.
Yes, thanks so
Thank you
much for
for
having me.
thank you for the work that you do. It's very important.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. And everybody, thank you for hanging out with us and listening to Brandy's story. I appreciate every single one of you guys. And until next time, much love. Be good.